Hi everyone, we are back with some unique content today to analyze a hand played between two members of the Super Smash Bros. Melee esports community, the legendary C9 Mang0 and the unsponsored Ludwig Ogren. As many of you may know, Mang0 is a prolific figure in the esports scene, and many would consider him one of the greatest Super Smash Bros. Players of all time. You might be less familiar with Ludwig, Mang0's opponent in this hand, and frankly, I didn't know too much about him. But apparently he came 837th at Genesis 3 in 2016, and he currently runs a Twitch channel. Our hand begins at 25-cent, 50-cent blinds, with each chip on the table representing 1 cent, and Ludwig decides to open 4-6 of hearts from under the gun +1. From this position, this is certainly too wide to be raising this hand under any circumstances, and it opens you up to getting exploited if any of your opponents adjust by correctly 3-betting more frequently. At this point in the hand, Ludwig's editor performed a bizarre jump cut, skipping the remaining preflop action, but from what I can tell, Mang0's calls, Mang0 re-raises to $4.50, and both Ludwig and Mike call. Facing the re-raise with 4-6 of hearts, this is a clear fold at this stack depth, as you shouldn't even be opening this hand in the first place. Mang0's 3-bet is a little too small, following a raise and a call. I'd like to see a size of $6 to $7 here next time, but with this being said, Mang0's small sizing is clearly overshadowed by Ludwig's 2 giant preflop mistakes. We see a 10-7-4 two-tone flop with a stack-to-pot ratio of about 2.5, and Ludwig checks his bottom pair. Mike Hayes checks, and Mang0 continuation bets about 70% of the pot. Ludwig decides to go all in, and Mang0 calls with King 10 offsuit, and his hand holds up to scoop the pot. For the sake of being able to run this through PioSolver, we're going to remove Mike Hayes from the hand and run this as a heads-up pot. Now yes, I understand that removing Mike Hayes significantly affects the post-flop strategies, but there's a chance that Mike would have just quit the hand anyway after remembering that time he got offstage Falcon punched. Anyway, given that we know Ludwig is raising preflop and calling a re-raise with 6-4 of hearts, I think it's fair to assume that his range heading into the flop looks something like this. As far as Mang0's 3-betting strategy, if we assume King 10 offsuit is near the bottom of his range, I think it's fair to assume his squeezing range looks like this. You'll notice this is wider than a typical squeezing range from the hijack versus the UTG +1 raise and a mid-position call, but in this spot, Mang0 clearly recognizes that he can comfortably 3-bet a wide linear range here for value, given that Ludwig will continue with an even wider range and never 4-bet bluff. You might be thinking that Mang0 still has to account for the opponents behind him waking up with a top 5% hand, but I think it's fair to assume that any of the players behind still to act would probably fold a hand like pocket aces or pocket kings, simply as a sign of respect to the Super Smash Bros. GOAT. On the 10-7-4 two-spade flop, if we deconstruct the ranges here, we can see that Mang0 has 55% equity, and neither player is going to have a nut advantage because both will retain most of the sets. If we look at the Pio output for Ludwig's flop decision, we can see that Ludwig is supposed to check 6-4 of hearts along with every hand in his range, which he wisely does. From Mang0's perspective, first let's look at how he should play his range versus an optimal opponent in equilibrium. Mang0 seems like the type of guy to go big or go home, so we're limiting him to a single bet sizing option of 75% pot on the flop. With this in mind, Pio elects to check 60% of the time and bet 40% of the time. As you can see, Mang0's choice to bet King 10 here with this sizing fits right in line with a game theory equilibrium, as we would expect from a world-class esports athlete. Now we go over to Ludwig. 6-4 of hearts is a pure call versus this sizing, and as you can see, he has made another glaring error here by going all in, losing himself almost 65 chips in expected value. But how does Ludwig's mistake here affect Mang0's flop betting strategy? Clearly, if Ludwig is going to check jam with any pair, and we node lock this in PioSolver and rerun the simulation, we can see Mang0's adjusted exploitative strategy. Mang0 should respond by c-betting almost any hand that is top pair or better, and then exclusively check all of his overcard hands like King-Jack suited that would traditionally be mixing a bet or check in equilibrium. As we can see, because Mang0 knows Ludwig will stack off with any pair, he is exploiting this loose play by bet calling with the large chunk of his range that can beat middling pairs. His king 10 offsuit ends up being a bet in both cases, but I'm sure if Mang0 had a hand like 10-8 suited, we would see him make the exploitative adjustment by bet calling the flop instead of checking it like he should versus a perfect opponent. When Ludwig goes all in with the node-locked range, you can see that Mang0's adjusted strategy is calling with every single hand he bet the flop with, which is actually pretty cool because he's constructed this bet calling range as a trap to perfectly take advantage of Ludwig's wide jamming range. All things considered, I think this hand really exemplifies Mang0's ability to transfer his skills as a top Super Smash Bros. Player into poker. In the same way that he would adjust to Ludwig's bad DI or teching habits in Smash, he has adjusted here by deviating from equilibrium frequencies, adopting an exploitatively wide linear 3-betting range and a uniquely tailored flop bet calling range to maximize his expected value. As for Ludwig, well, I feel like he said it best.
Well, what are you gonna do, boys?
You buying back in or what?
Fuck no.